Hey guys, back again. I thought I'd just give you a quick update on my thoughts regarding a few things today. The first thing is going to be COVID and how the whole situation seems to be advancing and the sort of bad results we're seeing in a few places, especially here in Europe. The second thing is Alibaba and Tencent have just been fined again, and the CCP's regulatory crackdown doesn't seem to be ending as a lot of people thought it would. And then the third thing is Elizabeth Holmes is going to take the stand in her Theranos fraud trial, which is going to be a little bit interesting. And then finally, just a tiny bit about Rittenhouse, no politics, don't worry, I'm not going to get consumed by all of that. So for those of you who are maybe in the US and COVID's sort of a foregone conclusion, you're mostly just ignoring it and getting on with your lives. That's not really how it is in a lot of other places, and in the Netherlands they've just instituted another lockdown. It feels a little bit, out of touch in my opinion. I think, to be honest, we just need to get past that. But the Netherlands are going the other direction and trying to keep cases low rather than rely on something like herd immunity. The people of the Netherlands don't seem particularly happy about it. There were a bunch of riots the other day. A few people were shot by police during those riots. All in all, it doesn't seem to be developing brilliantly. In another country in Europe again, Austria, they have announced that vaccines are going to be mandatory for the entire population, which is quite a big step. Now, to predate my views on this, I think it's a little bit too strong of a move, to be honest. Vaccination rates are already very high, and deaths are very low, and cases might be rising, but hospitalizations and deaths are far, far diminished from what they used to be. I'm vaxxed, I'm happy to be vaxxed. I'll probably end up getting that booster shot in a couple months when I'm offered it, but that doesn't mean I support the idea of making it mandatory for everyone. I think that's just a little bit too much in my mind. In Gibraltar, a British overseas territory on the Iberian Peninsula, I'm sure most of you know what it is, but it's basically Britain away from home, near Spain, very similar. It was the highest vaxxed region in the world. Over 99% of the people were double vaxxed, and deaths have remained very, very low, but cases have started to spike, and it's worrying a few people because it makes it seem as though the vaccines aren't as effective at halting the rising cases as we'd previously been told or scientists had thought. And that really brings me on to the crux of this topic, and it seems to be that the vaccines do work at stop people dying. They stop people from dying by and large. They have reduced deaths by hundreds of thousands probably, and at some point they will have saved millions of lives, but they are not as effective at stopping the spread of the virus as a whole. Cases are still rising, hospitalizations are rising too in places where vaccines are already 100% widespread, and it seems as though the requirements for being fully vaxxed are increasing all over the world. News have come out that suggests that in the US you won't be considered fully vaccinated until you've had your third jab, your booster shot, and I think the same is probably going to be the case in the UK and in Europe as well. And I think just as a society, people need to work out what they find acceptable, levels of death and levels of hospitalization and levels of restrictions on your freedoms to save lives. If locking down the entire country saves one life, well, I don't think many people are going to agree with that. But if it saved 10 million lives, then that's something we could probably get behind. But we're not at either of those extremes. We're somewhere in the middle, and it just isn't clear where we want to draw that line, where we're going to say, okay, enough's enough, or yep, let's keep restricting our freedoms to help protect the vulnerable. In terms of an economic point of view, lockdowns are really bad for the economy. Somehow they're not bad for the stock market, but that's because the markets are in a weird sort of euphoria. Netherlands is going to be hurt economically by these lockdowns. It will damage small businesses. It will mean that people who run coffee shops and corner stores will struggle to pay bills and make rent and things, and that's bad for them. So if you watch the video I just put out the other day about the Fed's financial stability report, you'll note that the Fed said that if they fail to contain the virus, if it starts wreaking havoc on the economy again, then that could be a potential trigger for a crash. And they're right. We are seeing cases rise all over the world. Thankfully, deaths and hospitalizations are not rising at the same rate. So as a society, we probably are getting closer and closer to just accepting that COVID's just like the flu now. It's going to be here forever, it's always going to be around, and we just need to learn to live with it. So yeah, it's something that it probably is worth keeping up to date on, looking at the data, seeing the cases, seeing where they're rising, in which countries and by how much, and just taking note that it could be a problem for the future. But at the moment, it looks like it is a whole lot of, fear, but not necessarily huge amounts of actual problems. Then on top of that, we have Alibaba and Tencent and Meituan, who have just been fined by the CCP again. A lot of people thought that this regulatory crackdown was over, that we were past the worst of it, and that from here on out, China would be a little bit more favourable to these big tech companies that are making them very wealthy and very powerful. But that doesn't seem to be the case. The Hang Seng index has fallen again today, extended its losses over the entire year. The Chinese stock market as a whole is just not looking very strong, or no one's got much confidence in it. Those people who were buying Alibaba on the way down because of its intrinsic value are probably thinking that they should have been paying a bit more attention to the regulatory risk posed by the CCP, and I'm sure most of them are regretting it. Some might be doubling down on their positions, but I have to say I've never been more glad to be away from China. This regulatory crackdown is on top of the fact that the economy as a whole actually in China is not looking too bright. You all know of the problems in the property index with property developers, but also with property prices themselves actually falling 1% over the last month alone. Sales of these investment properties has dropped off a cliff. I think Evergrande sold 97% fewer homes last month than the month prior, because people have lost faith in the company's ability to build homes and the ability of those apartments to maintain their value and be good investments, and that's really bad for their economy. Then in the US we have two big things that I want to talk about. The first is Theranos. Their huge fraud trial is well underway at this point, and Elizabeth Holmes herself is going to take the stand and give her point of view. So that's actually quite a big surprise that she's going to take the stand, because she's not really seen as very favourable. In general, people under investigation for financial fraud or securities fraud, things like that, they tend to do really bad with juries. They don't come along personable. They come out as out of touch and greedy, and so they tend to get convicted. So normally in cases like this, the defendant stays away from the stand as much as possible, but Elizabeth Holmes seems to be doing the opposite. She is sort of a master manipulator. She convinced millions of dollars to come her way on what was just one giant fraud. She tricked some very, very successful and wealthy people, executives of big companies. She convinced them all that they needed to invest billions of dollars into her great big startup that had nothing actually backing it. So maybe she thinks that she can convince the jury that she's favourable as well and innocent. Personally, I don't think it's going to work. It will be very interesting, if nothing else, to see which voice she uses on the stand. My money is on the deep one. I think it's too little too late to change it now, and it would come across as weird, and there's very few examples of her high-pitched voice, so she could make the argument that the deep one's her real one. Either way, that'll be quite an interesting trial to follow. Speaking of trials, and one that I'm going to try and not get consumed by the politics of, because I know that most people in this channel don't want to talk about things like that, is Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, he has been found innocent on all counts. I'm not going to say what I think of that, what my opinion is. I'm going to say that there have been fears that if this happened, if he was found innocent on all counts, that there would be a lot of riots or protests, and it could lead to a return to the late nights of burning buildings that we saw last year. As of yet though, that doesn't seem to be the case. Thankfully, there haven't been mass riots in Kenosha or various other places. There hasn't been huge amounts of violence. There have been some protests, but that was to be expected, and they are actually, for real this time, mostly peaceful. So that's really good news. I'm hoping that it represents a sort of return to normalcy. Even in the UK, we've had some very high tension moments, a lot of big protests in big cities, statues being toppled, and it's just bad for everyone. Maybe, you know, leaving lockdowns in the past and people getting back to their jobs and their lives and seeing their friends and family, going out to the cinema or going out for dinner has got people back to normal, and hopefully we're just past all of that high tension nonsense of the past. Yeah, so that is pretty much it for today. I just thought I'd give you guys my thoughts, my perspective on a few things going on right now. A little bit of an interlude while I get the next video up and running. I have started working with a couple editors that I'm going to be trying out. It may be, you know, it may take a little bit longer to get videos out for, you know, a week or two while this is all getting sorted. So I thought I'd chuck in a few extra of these walking videos just to fill the gaps, fill the space, and keep you guys entertained a bit. If you like these kind of videos, then consider joining the Patreon. I'm going to be trying and putting out extra ones of these every week, maybe an extra 2 each week onto the Patreon, exclusive for those guys, just to, you know, say thank you to you lot. The support with that community that we've been building is huge. It's growing pretty rapidly. The Discord's coming along lovely, and I'm really, really proud of that. Outside of that though, there are, you know, affiliate links in the description. BlockFi, there may be one for Masterworks as well. Not quite sure if that'll be up and running yet, but thanks for watching. Thanks for all the support. Stay stoic. Until next time.